The Free Thinker Show. Ignite your mind, challenge the norm.
Hey everyone, and welcome back. As we get closer to 2025, we keep hearing more and more questions about Medicare.
Yeah.
What's changing? What do we need to watch out for?
Right.
I think it's time for a deep dive.
It's smart to be ahead of the curve, especially with healthcare, right?
Absolutely. And I always say knowledge is power.
It is.
So let's empower ourselves with some information here.
Yes.
Now, I've been going through the materials you sent over, and I have to say there is some good news, which is always refreshing when we talk about Medicare, right?
There is. Yeah, there's a lot of good news actually coming up in 2025.
Okay, so give us the highlights.
Well, for starters, in 2025, Medicare Part D is getting a major change. We're talking about a $2,000 out-of-pocket cap on prescription drug costs.
Okay, so for those of us who skim headlines and need that broken down, what does this actually mean for your average person's budget?
Okay, so imagine you're someone who needs several expensive medications. Maybe you have a chronic illness, and in the past, those costs could just keep adding up, no limit in sight, right? Well, now, with this cap, once you hit that $2,000 mark, Medicare Part D will cover the rest of your covered medications for the entire year.
Wow.
Wow.
That is, talk about peace of mind, but also that's a big deal financially for a lot of folks.
It is, yeah.
Are there any other good changes we should know about?
Yeah, definitely. So Medicare Advantage plans are also stepping up their game. Starting in July of 2025, they'll be sending out new notices about supplemental benefits.
Oh.
Think of it like a use it or lose it reminder
Right.
for all those extra perks that come with some plans, like vision, dental, things that people forget about.
I love that. It's like finding a coupon you forgot you had, but it's for your health.
Yeah, exactly.
I am all about maximizing those benefits, but we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the challenges too, because, it's Medicare. It can't all be good news.
Right, it's not always smooth sailing.
And there's this data breach we need to unpack.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I think that's something a lot of people might not even be aware of.
Right, and it's a good reminder that even with positive changes, it's so important to be vigilant and aware, So back in May of 2023, WPS Insurance Corporation, their Medicare contractor, had a data breach.
Okay.
And this breach impacted just under 1 million beneficiaries.
Wow.
Yeah, so before we get into specifics, I think it's good to clarify for those who maybe don't fully grasp what a data breach means in this context. Could you kind of paint a picture of what kind of information was potentially accessed?
Yeah, so we're talking about sensitive information, things like names, addresses, birth dates, even social security numbers.
Oh, no.
And what's really concerning is that Medicare claims data itself might have been compromised.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that kind of information is really valuable to scammers because it can be used for medical identity theft, not just regular identity theft. So it's not just stealing your identity, it's like stealing your medical records and using that against you.
Exactly, yeah.
That's scary. And what's even more alarming is that we're talking about this now, but the notification about this breach didn't even go out until July of 2024, over a year later.
Yeah, the delay is definitely a cause for concern. It seems like WPS initially believed that the exposure was contained, but it turned out to be much broader than they initially thought.
Okay, so a year after the fact, what's being done for the people who were affected?
Well, CMS is now offering 12 months of free credit monitoring to anyone who might have been impacted.
Okay.
And they're also reissuing Medicare cards with unique beneficiary identifiers, which is a step in the right direction.
Right.
But we all know a new card doesn't solve everything.
No, and I think that's something that's really important for people to keep in mind.
Yes, absolutely.
This isn't a situation where you get a new card and you just assume everything's fine. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about what concrete steps people can take right now to protect themselves.
Yes.
Because knowledge is power.
It is.
So let's empower ourselves. What should people be on the lookout for?
So first and foremost, anyone who contacts you claiming to be from Medicare, especially if they mention the breach,
Right.
unless it's an official letter, like on CMS letterhead,
Okay.
be very skeptical.
So no phone calls, no emails, nothing like that.
Exactly. No texts.
Okay.
Nothing, no matter how official it sounds or how urgent they make it seem.
Because it feels like scammers really take advantage of situations like this, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. They use those scare tactics, that pressure, to try and trick you into giving up your Medicare number or other sensitive information.
It's so frustrating, that they're preying on the very people that Medicare is designed to help.
Right. Exactly.
And, it's just one more thing to worry about. And what's even more frustrating is that this data breach, this isn't an isolated incident when it comes to Medicare.
Unfortunately, no, it isn't. We're seeing a really alarming rise in Medicare scams overall.
Really?
Yes, and the financial impact of this is just staggering. We're talking billions of dollars in fraudulent claims being filed.
Billions.
Billions.
That is, I can't even wrap my head around that number. Who's footing the bill for that? If there's that much fraud going on, who's ultimately paying for it?
Well, in the end, it's a combination of taxpayers and, sadly, in some cases, the seniors themselves.
Oh, no.
Yeah, there have been cases where people are being held responsible for these charges that they didn't even know about.
That just makes my blood boil. It's just infuriating to think about people exploiting this system that's meant to help, vulnerable individuals.
Yeah, I have to
Like,
say.
what are they doing? Like, what kind of tactics are we talking about here?
Well, they're getting really creative. I'll give them that.
Yeah.
CBS News Chicago, they did an expose recently on a scam involving medical providers like Waba Medical and Kaya Medical. And they were billing Medicare for this expensive medical equipment, specifically catheters that the patients never even received.
So they're just making up these charges for things that don't even exist and sticking Medicare with the bill?
Sticking Medicare with the bill, and in some cases, the patients.
Ugh, that's awful. And I know we keep talking about these numbers, but there are real people behind those statistics.
Absolutely.
And, I was reading about Ann Caruso.
Right, yeah.
She discovered $15,000 in fraudulent charges
Unbelievable.
on her Medicare record.
No.
And it was mostly for catheters that she never ordered.
Wow.
And thankfully, Medicare did cover most of it, but she was still left with this $3,100 bill.
Yeah, that was sent to her supplemental insurance.
It's not right. And, her story's not unique. There was another case, Tom England in Texas.
Right.
He found over $88,000
Oh, my God.
billed to his account for catheters he never received.
It's heartbreaking.
It is, and I know Medicare has been able to stop payment on a lot of these fraudulent claims.
Yeah, like 95%.
But that other 5%, that's still a lot of money.
It is a significant amount, yeah.
So clearly vigilance is key here.
Yes.
We need to be proactive
Absolutely.
about protecting ourselves and our loved ones.
Yes.
So what can people do? Because, we could talk about this all day, and it can feel really overwhelming, like it's just this constant battle.
Right.
So what are, the top things, if you could just tell people to do a couple things to protect themselves, what would they be?
Okay, well, first of all, I always say knowledge is your best defense, right?
Right.
And it starts with a really simple step that people often overlook.
Okay.
You have to check your Medicare summary notices.
Oh, those statements.
Yes.
Okay.
Don't just toss them aside. Open them.
So we're talking about those statements that we get in the mail.
Yes, exactly.
That detail all the services that have been billed to Medicare.
Yes, and look at them carefully.
Okay.
Because if something seems off, even a small detail, don't ignore it.
It's like that saying, trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is.
Exactly.
So what should people do if they spot something that looks fishy?
Don't hesitate. Call 1-800-MEDICARE immediately and report it.
Okay, so report those fraudulent charges right away.
Yes, and remember, you also have your local senior Medicare patrol.
Right, they're like the Medicare detectives, right?
Exactly. They can help you understand your rights, walk you through correcting those fraudulent bills.
Okay.
They can even give you some preventative advice.
So you don't have to navigate this alone,
You don't have to, no.
which is really reassuring to hear.
Yes.
So to recap here, as we head into 2025, there are some good things happening,
Yes.
especially for our Part D folks with the new out-of-pocket cap on prescription costs.
Yes.
And it's great that Medicare Advantage is stepping up and increasing their communication
Right?
about those underutilized benefits.
Absolutely.
But we have to remember vigilance is key,
It is more important than ever.
especially with this data breach and just the rise of these increasingly sophisticated scams.
Absolutely.
So everyone listening, check those Medicare summary notices
Yes.
with a fine-tooth comb.
So please.
If something seems off, report it.
Yes.
Ask questions. Use those resources like the Senior Medicare Patrol.
They're there to help.
Knowledge is power. And it's our best defense in this very complicated world of Medicare.
Well said. And speaking of knowledge as a defense, looking ahead, it's worth pondering a larger question here.
Ooh, I like where this is going. What's the big question we should be asking ourselves?
Well, this data breach, these scams,
Yeah.
They really highlight how vulnerable our information is in this digital age,
Hmm. Right.
And as our healthcare system relies more and more on technology, you have to wonder, how do we make sure that it's convenient but also secure,
Right.
especially for the people who are most likely to be taken advantage of?
It's not just about Medicare, is it?
No,
It's bigger than that.
it's about protecting all of our personal information.
Right.
Because in this day and age, data is currency.
It really is. And, that's why I think these deep dives are so important.
Absolutely.
The more we know, the better we can protect ourselves
Exactly.
and advocate for a system that really puts our well-being and our security first.
I agree.
Well, folks, I think that about wraps up our deep dive into Medicare
Yes.
as we head into 2025.
A lot to think about.
A lot to think about. Some good changes, some challenges.
Right.
But as always, knowledge is power.
It is.
We've got to stay informed, stay vigilant, and if anything was unclear, go back, listen again,
Yes.
and don't be afraid to reach out to those resources we mentioned.
They are there to help.
You've got this, everyone. Until next time, keep diving deeper.